So let's discuss this graph for a moment. First of all, I discovered this later on because it took me some time, again, maybe to go behind this mental block that it was supposed to be an S-curve, because that was actually were my first models. I took the price and addresses, and then I say, okay, now how the addresses grow? Of course, like an S-curve, right? And then I try to make a prediction of a model of a price of Bitcoin in the future based on this S-curve. But it was almost like fitting a round hole in a square, a round peg in a square hole, right? Whatever the
is it possible? I've seen this chart before where it overlays different technology adoption curves, and it shows, for instance, the internet was adopted more quickly than the telephone because the physical infrastructure was already in place for the internet. And then I think Bitcoin's been even steeper than the internet. So could it be that there is an S-curve still occurring, but it's just steeper and steeper and steeper? And that's why we're seeing it as a power law?
No, because it looks like a beautiful power law almost from the beginning. And in fact, there are examples of things that grow like power laws and spread like power law that are viruses. So virus infection in certain condition, and the condition needs to be that there is some kind of curbing mechanism. Like, for example, it turns out that AIDS is such a thing. Like AIDS historically grew with the cube of time.
Okay.
And instead of being an exponential, right? And the curbing mechanism in that case was the awareness, right? Because there were news about AIDS, and people took different precautions, etc. So that actually slowed down the spread. And that is what is going on with Bitcoin, that we have this viral spread. It's very fast. It goes with the cube of time. Again, you double the time, that means 8 times more. I'm using addresses as a proxy for Bitcoin. Right? So it's kind of a measure of the activity of a network. So you can think that it's proportional somehow to the number of Bitcoin. And people comment, sometimes say, well, but some people open 5 addresses, but it's still proportional. So it's what we have, and it's an observable.
Yeah, because it also works the other way, where one exchange will have millions of customers will be on
so
few
the two
addresses.
things balance each other. And so it's a good proxy. It's an observable. It's all what, unfortunately, we don't have to give our name when, we buy. So
that's a feature, not a bug.
It's a very good. And so we have a proxy much better than other things where you don't have no information at all. We have all this information with Bitcoin. So it's a good proxy of adoption, right? So the addresses grow with the cube of time. And it's really beautiful because it looks like one of these viruses that is curbed. Now, people could say, well, I don't like that curbing, right? Because why should it be curbed? It's actually good. It's like the nuclear reactor where you want to slow down the adoption because you want to give time for Bitcoin to grow. The infrastructure needs to grow. The miners need to buy the equipment and do it in time. You don't want an explosive growth and then the system collapse on itself because it cannot support itself. So this is actually the best possible growth as fast as possible. Come on. 100 million per in 15 years. How much do you want more than that, right? And now that it's bigger, it looks low to us, and many people are impatient because, we would like to have a growth that was in the beginning where you could multiply by many times your wealth, right, within a few months. People will want that, but it's not good for the system.
That sounds like a feature, not a bug, too, because as you said earlier, you're training people to be lower time preference in a way, to be more patient, right? If Bitcoin just went up 100 million% every 7 years or whatever, like that wouldn't make sense.
It would not make sense. It would not be the infrastructure.
And everyone would be the Lambo mentality and all of this. So it's like it actually needs to level out to mature as a global reserve asset.
Exactly, right? And so if we want... because it's a good thing that there are retirement plans based on Bitcoin. It's a good thing that there are nations. I don't want nations to own 50% of Bitcoin, by the way, or even 20. Hopefully, it's a small portion, right? But it's nice, right? That we are starting to think, let's get a strategic reserve, right? It needs to be a balance. I really don't like the 20% or set. I don't know what is your feeling about that. I think a good compromise is okay. It's good that we are interested in doing that, but I would rather people own Bitcoin than nations,
an inevitable part of Bitcoin's monetization
Yeah.
that every human organization is going to want a piece of it.
Exactly.
So yeah, ultimately, I think there's a saying in Bitcoin. I don't know if it's entirely true. There probably are exceptions, but that everything is good for Bitcoin. So like whatever's contributing to Bitcoin's monetization,
Exactly.
even if it is a state buying it, well, the state is sort of taking its own poison pill because it's going to demonetize
they cannot control
certain state
it,
revenues,
exactly.
like inflation,
Yeah.
etc.
It's
So
like Bitcoin is a warrior that is winning without fighting.
Yes.
You know, it's like a Zen warrior.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you come to me, you come to me. Like,
Yes.
Saylor did the same thing. He was talking bad about Bitcoin when
Right.
he converted.
Right.
Same thing
Right.
with, the BlackRock. They were criticizing Bitcoin. Now they are supporting.
And like a black hole, it is unidirectional, right? Once you cross that event horizon, philosophically or cognitively with Bitcoin, there are no ex-Bitcoiners, as has been said. It's like once you go into the rabbit hole, you don't come out.
Right, exactly. And you know why? I have an idea about that, because if you're thinking about like an organism, think about when a cell decided to put aside, right, the fact of being alone and doing his own thing by itself and say, okay, I'm going to join this network. Once he did that, you cannot really leave a network because the value is in the network itself.
Yeah.
It's different from Facebook. You can jump ship with Facebook. Right? You can say, hey, there is a better place. I'm going to X, or I'm going to Nostr. I'm going somewhere else. With Bitcoin, you cannot do that. Of course, there are some people that leave, etc. But it's a minority, like you say. I think it's really a minority because you're going to lose the value, the time, the energy, the money that you put in. So you need to stay in the system, right? Because
that's right.
the value is in the system itself, right?
That's right.
It's the only place where that really happens beside organisms, or a city or whatever. It's a big investment to be, sure, you can go to another city, but, you get adapted to the city, you live in the city, you get, your children in the school, so you become an integral part of that system, and then it's very difficult to leave that system. With Bitcoin, even more so.
Yeah, it's almost like it's damn near impossible to opt out of the social network that is money, because you get all of these advantages, right? That you get to benefit from the specialization of others as they benefit from your specialization. Makes your life easier. You participate in the division of labor. Sure, you can opt out of Bitcoin to another money, but you can't really opt out of money unless you're going to go live in a cave somewhere. And so what are we saying with Bitcoin is like Bitcoin's just the best money, basically. So that's why people tend to not, once you opt in, you don't opt out.
Exactly. And the power law, again, is the expression of that, right? That is needs to do that. It needs to become the monetary system of the world, and it's finding this very clever, very wise path, right? So when many times they say, when you argue against the power law, you're arguing against Bitcoin. I mean, I would like more and more people really understand the philosophy behind it, and maybe you've been very good with these things. You can help me to.
Well, hopefully this episode will help. But let's look at the next.
Yeah. So exactly. So let's go to the next slide. And so that straight line. By the way, about that straight line, if I can say a couple of things, there are some statistical tools that you can do, like the R-square. So the R-square is because it's not just like a straight line that looks like straight.
And that is the metric of virality, right?
Yes.
R-squared.
Well, it's the metric of how good that fit is, right? From a statistical point of view. So the R-square tell us for Bitcoin is about 0.95.
Oh, wow.
That means 95% of the behavior of Bitcoin is explained by that straight line.
Wow. Okay.
And everything else is basically that oscillations that we are seeing that are associated with the bubble. Now, notice that the oscillations are going up and down relatively to the straight line. So they almost cancel. So it's almost like they were not there. In fact, this graph is another way of looking at that basically, even if there are these oscillations, really the straight line is the closest representation of what Bitcoin does. Now, many people get confused about the straight line because they're thinking, really, is it straight? Well, it's straight in this weird scaling space, right? Where we are looking at how the scale of the price changes relatively to the scale of time. Now, if you go back to the linear graph, it is, our minds are very linear. We have very difficult time to think about logs, etc. You get this graph. Now, what this graph is. So, first of all, the red curve is the power law.
Right.
So now
And
it
this looks like this looks like
hockey
one
stick.
half of a parabola, as you were describing at the beginning.
It's actually a super parabola, right?
Okay.
Because it's the positive side because we don't have negative
Sure,
money, right? Or negative time. In
Yeah,
that
and this
case.
is days since Genesis
So
block.
then it's everything. First of all, when we talk about time, we always talk about the time from the beginning of Bitcoin. It makes sense. It's the only time that makes sense. It's almost like Bitcoin.
Day zero.
It's almost like the Big Bang, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the day when everything started, right?
Yeah.
So you measure the time from that Genesis block,
Exactly.
right? January 3, 2009.
Yeah.
Do you remember the time? Was it 12 a.m. or something like that? I don't
I'm
remember
not
what
exactly
the
sure.
time
Yeah.
it was. But it was January 3, 2009.
I just remember written in the Genesis block was Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks, which is just attesting to the purpose of Bitcoin. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it looks like that hockey stick, right? So it's a hockey stick. And so when people say, oh, the price went parabolic. Well, parabolic is square. This is 6. So it's a super parabolic if you want, right? So remember, we double the time, we get 64. We triple the time, we get 720. I don't remember 4 times what 4 times. We can check it out, but it's something crazy, right? So longer you wait, because of a multiplicative factor, you get this boost in value, you know? So it tells you, be patient, but I'm going to reward you with this very non-linear behavior of a price. And it looks like that J. And what you see, that black curve, is nothing else than a moving average over 4 years. And I did 4 years because it kind of tends to kind of eliminate the bubble a little bit because we are 4 years periodic, right? You have the lows, you have the top, and they kind of almost cancel perfectly, not completely, but you can see that black line really tends to the red one, right? With some oscillations around it. So it's really, really cool. You cannot look at that graph and say, I don't think that red line is a good representation of the price of Bitcoin.
You just
It is.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, how can you deny it? You know, there is nothing to deny. And if I could zoom, because that is the problem with the linear graph, you could zoom there at the first days, you will still see that very, very good approximation of the behavior of the price. So this is why we get that 0.95 R squared. It's incredible, you know. And by the way, you know, I work in 3 different fields. I work in astrophysics. This is where I started, got my PhD in astrophysics. Then I went to neuroscience. I was working at Northwestern studying the brain during sleep. And then finally finance, right, through Bitcoin, because I wanted to understand Bitcoin, I look at also stock, gold, etc. So I have a pretty good experience in looking at financial data. So in these 3 different fields, when I was playing with astrophysics, in astrophysics, sometime you get 0.9, etc. You need to go to real physical phenomena to start to see that incredible correlations.
Right.
In medicine, when I was in neuroscience, if you get 0.65, 0.7, you can publish a paper. And it's like people will get excited, right? In fact, I was talking with an anthropologist that I was in line at the Nashville, and we discussed it about his research, and he said, I had shivers when you show your results, because the fact, first of all, there is this scaling behavior that we found in anthropology all the time.
So is this the first thing in the social sciences you've seen with above a 0.9 R squared?
It's incredible. I challenge anybody to show me any type of
So it's a
behavior
social phenomenon that exhibits the qualities of a physical phenomenon.
Exactly.
That's
This is
incredible.
why I have a hat, right? It says Bitcoin is a force of nature. That is the slogan, right? It is beautiful again, because to me, it's like all the things that we talk all the time as Bitcoiners, right? With Bitcoin is more like nature, it's intelligent, and it's like cities, all these things, right? That our intuition tell us that there is something different about Bitcoin. It's not like a normal asset. And now we have a mathematical proof. So I don't know why people resist this at all.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money. And be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.